You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to Don't Give Up, Just Quit. The title came from a conversation that Stephanie and I had prior to today's recording for you. We were talking about this concept of giving up and quitting. You'll know as you are listening to the conversation, we focus on the quitting side because of the elements around that we face and that are more apparent. The thing is, we don't really talk about giving up. I don't think we want to give up. I think if we get to the place where we're giving up, we're overwhelmed, we have lost our self-confidence in ourselves, we're not quite sure where we stand, and we're just out there floating around without an anchor anywhere. And what quitting allows us to do is to be thoughtful and purposeful and intentional about what's going on. Now, quitting and giving up both have extremes. And when we're thinking about the quitting side, it's this concept, and it comes up in the conversation. And maybe you've done this before. You've walked into somebody's office, or maybe you've been the person who's walked into the office and said, I'm done, I quit. And they throw down their pencil or their pen and they walk out the door with all of their stuff and they're done. It happens. What does that mean? And is that really useful? And could it have been prevented? We touch on all of those things. The thing that underlies all of it when we're thinking about quitting is that we all quit, we all must quit, and that does not make us quitters. There's a big difference between being a quitter and quitting. And so listen to the dialogue, take away the tips, and just think as you're listening, are my values clear, my personal values? And when you're thinking about this in your role at work, do I really get what the values of our company are? I would like you to enjoy this conversation that I have with Stephanie Sims of Finance Ability. And you can find out about Stephanie on thevoiceofboldbusiness.com in our one-to-one section. She is one of our co-hosts whom I love to have. And I know if you've been listening for a while, you've heard her. And if you're new to the show, you will definitely hear her again.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Today, we're talking about not giving up, not quitting, or giving up and quitting, depending on how your ears hear parts of this conversation. Stephanie and I, we're going to talk about, is it okay to quit, to start this conversation? What does quitting actually mean to you, Stephanie?
People get confused. I get confused sometimes too, because quit is almost like money. It's kind of a heavily charged word.
Yes.
Different things to different people. And so I think to some people, it may mean abandoning or not finishing or somehow not succeeding, right? Some people, I think in their heads, quit equals failure.
Yes, I would equate that.
It's a bad, kind of generally perceived as a negative thing. However, I find it really funny because it's very situational, right? So if you talk to somebody who just quit their job, a lot of times what they'll have is they'll have a little bit of a swagger. Right? They'll have this kind of Johnny Paychecks, take this job and shove it thing going on.
Yes.
Like I went in there and I told him I was sick of this and I'm done, man. And I quit. And they're happy about it. And it's hard to know if they're actually relieved because they're out of a situation that was really uncomfortable for them, or if they're kind of just putting this brave face on it, which is, this was a really terrible situation and I didn't know what else to do, so I had to leave, but I wanted to take charge of the way I was going to leave so that I could feel better about it. Finding a way to empower themselves in a situation where they felt they didn't have any power, really.
I'm going to go back to this concept of a quitter, and people say, don't be a quitter. And that's supposed to put this thing in us that, hey, you're part of this. Hey, people depend on you. So show up. And I believe in an element of that, especially in a team sport or a volunteer thing or a committee, even in our families. The commitments that we have made are really important to keep. Now, when we're thinking about that and we're thinking about this concept of, so don't quit, or don't be a quitter. I love what you were saying about this concept of swagger. And it's really interesting that if people, and I've been in this situation too, if people are so fed up with something that they quit and they are elevated by it, I wonder if it's a lasting elevation, or if there's like this, people who are able to do that also then feel that whatever the equivalent of buyer's remorse is, what did I just do? Kind of concept after the fact, after it sinks in, after that adrenaline rush is gone. Because I don't have that view of the world. Every job I've ever quit, I have agonized over. I have known in my heart, well, my head has been telling me, you're letting everybody down, you're walking away, they really need you, even though there was a complete and clear separation of what path I am on, what path they are on, and they're no longer the same path. I really was thinking about that when we were talking about originally the title, Don't Give Up, Just Quit. You know, we talked a little bit about that confidence piece, but I'm wondering is how much right and wrong is actually rooted in quitting?
Again, it's personal for everybody. It has a lot to do with your family of origin, the way you were brought up, what you were taught. I like that you brought up sports because I do think it has a lot to do with that. I played sports as a kid. It was very important in my family that we kept our commitments. So if I signed up for a team, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if we were dead last in the league and we knew we weren't going to win. We went to every game, and I sat on the bench if I wasn't chosen to play because we said we were going to do it. I wrote this down when you were talking because I think that there's maybe a deeper issue here between us feeling like we've respected our commitments, which is very important, and then us feeling like we getting to that point where we don't feel that we're getting an equal level of respect and saying, okay, look, I'm not going to invest my time and energy in this anymore because you know what? I'm the only one showing up. And that's when I think that sort of let's quit can be empowering because you're like, you know what? I just recognized that this is not an equal relationship here. This is not, for whatever reason, like you said, because we're on two different paths, or just because the other person may not be capable of providing the level of commitment and respect that we, I'm thinking about a project now, for example, you know, you're working with somebody and they're like, yeah, I can do that. And 5 times in a row, they don't do it. And sometimes you're just like, you know what? We started with the best intentions. I believe that we both started out the way we wanted to do this, but we're not getting there. I wonder if part of it is really that kind of internal balance between, look, I said I would do this, but now I see that for whatever reason, maybe a reason that has nothing to do with me, doing this is just not possible. And I'm going to choose not to put my energy and time and stress and all that into something that's not going to achieve the goals that I set for myself. And I have to be okay with, I'm using air quotes if people can't see, with not respecting my commitments or not keeping my word, because I know that my time and energy are worth more than just sort of throwing them into something that's not going to produce results.
Okay.
What about that?
Okay. I love that you brought up respect. There's a level of expectation there. I also hear you talking a lot about values and personal values. And I've done this exercise with you, Stephanie. So I just want to talk about it briefly in the sense of, if we don't know what our personal values are, or we think we know, but they're not written down, we really are not able to prioritize, understand what's going on, or have a realistic expectation of a give and a take in a relationship of a one-to-one or one-to-many. And I know I've done this, and I've probably talked about this before. I have my own values, my company has values, and my family has values. Where we start with that really matters, and how many values we have also matters, because if we have too many values, there's no way we can really honor all of them all at once. And so, for example, I have 3 values. My company has 3 values. One of them is overlapped with mine, and my family has 3 values that all of my company and myself wrap up into. What is that? 9? 9. I have 9 values to keep track of that I can actually pull out and go, these are the values around this. Here's the values around this. I think that has been really instrumental and helpful to me. And when we did that exercise for you versus your business, Stephanie, what was your takeaway of having them be separate like that?
I think it's really interesting because something I had trouble with which is where you were super useful to me too, is when, especially when we're in business for ourselves, we just have it all kind of mashed together, right? So it's like, well, it's me, it's the business, it's just, it's just everything. And I think part of what happens is that we can, inside of our business, I don't want to say overemphasizing, but that's kind of the right word, we can kind of let our personal values kind of impinge on what we're trying to do inside of our company.
And to say that differently, that means we are our business and we take everything too personally.
Right, exactly. And so what happens is we don't make a good decision for the business because we're wearing our personal hat, which is, well, and this is a big one for me, right? You know this. Well, one of the things everybody can always count on is I'm going to do what I say. Okay, that's awesome. But does that mean that when I make a mistake, or when a client doesn't hold up their end of the deal, or when things don't go the way that we expected them to go, I still need to keep investing time and energy in something that's not going to serve me, the company, my client? And that's where I think we can get into conflict. And that's where kind of having these words that are supercharged makes it even more complicated, because we get this immediate emotional reaction. Personally, we're like, oh, I'm not a quitter. I don't quit, man.
And so the 11th hour comes and a client shows up and gives everything, but there's still like 24 hours worth of work to do, and the project is done and it is due in 8 hours because I said that. Now what?
Well, exactly. And it's like, or someone comes to you after you've said to them, this is the way I work. If you're not ready to show up or provide me the information I need, or be 2 meetings on time, or whatever it is that you're need from them, and you say to them, look, this is just not going to work. And then they come back to you 2 weeks later. Yeah, but really, I really need your help. You're the only one. And you get a little ego stroking. You get all these kind of things that make you feel good. And you're like, maybe I could help them.
Right. And so let's look at that value, because the other piece of that was expectation. So we'll talk about expectations for a minute. And then I think we should tie back our expectations to the concept. If my value is, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, no matter what, till the death of me. Right?
Well,
or the detriment of everybody around me.
Exactly. Till everyone in my family is like, would you stop already?
And it comes with setting the expectation, which you just alluded to, Stephanie. How do we take the time to think about and plan how we want an interaction to go? I mean, one thing that I really admire everybody about Stephanie is that when we're talking and we're having these conversations, the thing that she says more often than not, and it's actually starting to sink in to me, is she goes, I have intentional meetings. If I don't know why I'm going to a meeting, I won't go to a meeting. For example, she's set that expectation for herself in terms of, is it going to be worth her time or not? Flip side of that is there's preparation, which really I love, because there's all about action, and there's all about everything that it means to act and then figure out what's going on. There's an element of that too. Preparation is a type of action. Preparation allows us to reflect ourselves, whether we're wearing the role in our business, whether we're wearing the role of leader in the business, whether we're talking with a colleague or a friend or a potential client. I was going to say stranger, could be a stranger too.
Possible.
But there's this element of, I'm doing some preparation. There's active, intentional action there. And that purpose makes a big difference. So I think we could spend a little bit of time and literally just talk about, how do we set expectations? Because I think we do things to do things, and there's really no direction to them. There's no purpose in the grand sense of, I'm just going to take actions because then I'm creating momentum. And Stephanie and I both know that is not the way that it goes.
It's really interesting, because I do think that a lot of people get into this. I do it too, right? Like there'll be times when you go to something like a networking meetings.
Oh yeah. Okay. This is great. Which all of us must go to, our networking meetings. We all must do it.
Good things happen when you leave the house, right?
That's
so
right.
I'm not saying sit in your room and don't do anything. That is not what I'm saying here. However, there is a huge difference between a really well-targeted networking meeting where you have the opportunity to connect with people who could be your clients, who could be part of your team, who could be a vendor, who could be useful to you and your business, and just your generic, hey, let's go to an industry conference, for example, and let me just walk around that puppy and get 300 business cards because, that's going to be awesome.
Right.
I think the problem is, again, when we don't necessarily focus on the values, we have that lack of purpose, and all of a sudden we're stuck in the realm of feelings, which is, well, but it feels good because I'm busy. I went out and did something. And then we get kind of caught, like you were saying, in this moving from thing to thing. But that's sometimes how we get into the situations where then we have to say, okay, I'm halfway down this road and I'm looking and there's a big cliff.
Exactly.
I don't want to go any further down this road now, but how do I stop?
The other side of that, which we've talked about before, is I've spent so much money already. There's got to be a way to build a bridge by the time I get there.
And how do you know, right? Because
that's right.
Now we're going to do pop culture, but now it's like Speed, right? Yes. Remember the moment in Speed when he sees, he's looking and he's like, the bridge isn't finished. The bridge isn't finished. Okay, now you got to floor it, man, because there's no way we're going to make it over that hole unless you just floor it. And there's that moment where you really have to make that decision. Do I double down in terms of effort, energy, investment, or do I need to slam on the brakes because this is not going anywhere?
Yeah. And it comes down to it, in that moment, you don't know if there was no pre-work, no thoughtful action in preparation. And so a big part of setting expectations, or just knowing what our expectations are, is to prepare, is to do some planning. You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. This is program 42. Don't give up, just quit. I'm thinking back, one of my most beloved bosses, his name was Al, used to say, Jessica, everything to you is black and white. And I would always be really confused by that because nothing is ever black and white. I make plans to change the plans, but I do the preparation. Now, when a decision is made, however, I do become black and white. Don't you dare go changing things once that decision has been made. We're on that path. And it's really funny. It took me like 10 years to realize what he actually meant by that. And it was that latter piece. Oh, I guess I am really rigid here. So thanks, Al. I finally got it. Sometimes it comes down to expectations. If everybody's agreed to do something, and then all of a sudden there are more questions and we have to start over, that is so difficult.
Right.
So difficult. Oh. In fact, that actually might be my biggest pet peeve, is people changing their minds. Not that changing their mind is a bad thing. Changing our mind is okay, all the way up until the decision has been made.
Well, it's so funny because this is where you and I have a lot of overlap, right?
Yeah.
If we're not ready to make a decision because we think we need more information, then that's fine. We wait. Someone go get the information and then let's talk about it again. Right? We're just going to let this thing hang out there in limbo forever. But I do think it's so funny because some of this is coming back to how firmly people believe in their own worth for me.
Okay.
Because I do think there's an element of like feeling like you have the right to say something, feeling like you have the right to say stop or to say speed up.
Yeah.
That can impact how people see this. I do think that even in the process of making decisions, everybody's different.
Right.
I think that this is where having a set of company values and having even down to processes and procedures that people understand, okay, you know what? We're not going to have 20 meetings to make a decision about where we have the company picnic.
Right. Exactly.
That's not a good use of our time and resources. We're going to have one meeting. And so if you have suggestions about the way that you want the company picnic to go, you're welcome to attend this meeting. If you can't attend this meeting, you're welcome to give your suggestions to the committee chair. Making sure that people feel heard is important.
Yeah.
But also making sure that people understand what the process is so that then they can get behind whatever decision was made because they feel that they participated in the process to whatever level they were comfortable doing.
And if they chose not to, they felt the invitation open to not participate. Same thing. And they would still be okay with it. Yes. And I want to put a caveat on a little bit of what I was saying because I love your example. And I would say if a decision is made and this path has started to go down and you see there's no bridge, or there's a whole bunch of money invested and you're kind of being pushed toward the cliff because of some external factor of investment before. If new information comes up that must be inserted into the process, that is way different than, well, I kind of feel like this today, and we didn't really talk about this very much. And something that we said way back at the beginning really caught my eye, and I really want to go back there. Those are two very, very different pieces of
But I think people don't always see that, right? Because I think part of it is also, again, kind of based in this feeling. And I'm not saying we should ignore our gut instinct, because I think there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of value to intuition. But I think that sometimes when we don't use that as a tool and we haven't necessarily honed it very well, fear can show up as intuition. And it's kind of like, oh, danger, danger, this could be bad for me. I don't like it.
Right.
Feels like a gut feeling, like we need to talk about it more. But the truth is, it's just sort of, I don't want to do that.
Right. I don't want to do that. I'm not sure of it. It's outside my comfort zone. Holy cow, we're going down this path of change. All of those things are necessary. Now, I bet that ties into this. You were talking about self-worth and you wanted to take a little caveat there. It seems like this might be the right time to bring that in.
But it's interesting when we were talking about the job thing earlier, because, we've all had experiences where we left jobs and maybe we've had to let people go.
It's awkwardness, the awkward, really hard conversations.
Yeah, those painful conversations, right? And it's funny because I was trying to think, as I gave that example of take this job and shove it, how did I feel when I was in that situation? And there were times when it was a very empowering thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it helped me grow because I had sort of made a step towards recognizing my worth, right? Like, okay, look, it's really awesome that I'm working here and I've really enjoyed the experience that you've given me. But honestly, for what I'm doing, you should be paying me more. I had that conversation, like, my personal values were making sure that everybody was on the same page and making sure that they didn't feel like I had let them down. And so I felt like I had a conversation with a particular person a couple of different times and expressed what it was that I felt was fair. And that kind of went unheard.
Yeah.
I started looking for another job. And so when my job came, this person called me up and said, I thought you told me that, you were going to let me know and you wanted to stay here. And I said, look, we had that conversation like a year ago. And I told you what I thought was fair and nothing happened.
Right.
And so I felt okay with it. But I know other people who went through that same process and theirs was more like, almost like I had a bad day.
Right.
It was kind of like a relationship breakup in the way that they did it. It was like everything was fine. Then they had kind of this big blow up and they're like, well, forget you. I'm out of here. Not that they didn't have another job, but they left for a job that was basically the same job, same pay. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Again, not intentional at all. Just kind of, I'm sick of this and I'm done. I'm leaving.
And they stay on the hamster wheel and they end up in the same place. And the problems, the quote problems, show up in the next space too, because
exactly.
Yeah. The job that I quit, that I loved the most, it was actually a value thing. And I really struggled with this. I had continued to run this business and travel and do all of the stuff that was asked of me. And I was more than happy to do it. I loved every second of it. I had made a commitment that I was going to go back to college and finish. It was half done. So I only had 2 years left. I was willing to do whatever it took to make it happen, which would mean I would have to travel a little less. I would need to have a little more boundaries, more time to do some studying, not a lot. I was married, but I didn't have any children at the time. So I was totally open to having that work. And I brought a plan and I asked about it. And I said, this is what I want. It was not met with response. I was told, you don't need to go back to school. You're getting all the experience that you need right here. And I said, but this is important to me. I made myself a promise. And now is the right time for me to do this. And they said, no. Here was the kicker for me. I was a director. They paid for their CTO to go back and get a master's degree. And he got to study on the job, take classes without having to take time off, go to tests and do all of this other stuff. And I think there were a couple of reasons for that. There's an obvious one of them. And that was the culture of the organization, better or worse. And so I really struggled. I was like, wow, I can't stay here. I can't stay here if I'm not going to be able to do what is important to me. as much as this job is important to me. They were both really important. So I had to make a really hard choice, and our paths split. And I knew I made the right choice when the CEO of the company, who didn't want me to go, didn't find out until close to my last day. And he called me at 5:00 on my last day of my notice. What can we do? What can we do? And I said, it's too late. I've made other plans. I've got my process together, and this wasn't unexpected. I said, this is not unexpected. I had a conversation. I really had to think about it based off of the response that I was given, and I made a choice. And so it wasn't just a month of notice that I gave. It was months of other stuff that could have happened too. So I said, I'm really sorry that this is when the conversation was going to get started, because I'm past that. Right? And that's an expectation thing. And here's the other thing. We have to be our own advocate. So I'm going to stand up right here and say, that was the hardest thing I ever did. It was also the best thing I ever did. And I didn't have any confidence about it. I was really sad. I actually grieved when I left that job. I grieved. But it was the best thing that I ever did, because I had my own voice. I found what I needed. I realized what was necessary, and I understood that there was a gap. And after working to see if the gap could be closed, when it couldn't, it became obvious what the next choice was going to be. And so there's this element of boundary in that. A value, a set of values, gives us the concept of having boundaries, because it's within those boundaries that we are able to have some expectations and be able to communicate those expectations and invite people to meet us. And we can't expect it of them, but we can invite them to meet us.
And when you talk about expectations, I think that that's where having a set of values personally is important. But I think as a company, it's really crucial, because that's really the first kind of identification of how many points do we connect on.
Right.
Right. Because what I was hearing when you were talking is, it didn't sound like, I don't know if they had a written mission.
Oh, yeah.
But it didn't necessarily sound like that the company was being managed to those values.
Yes, but there were breakdowns in how the values were communicated throughout the organization. So I would say our CEO and our senior management team, yeah, they had that. They were not as good at communicating to the next tier down, and there were big gaps. And so that next tier down, and I was part of that next tier down, there were even more gaps between that and the people after us and below us that we were responsible for. And so I would say they had them, but we didn't have shared meaning.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Because that was what I was thinking is, yeah, starting place is the word.
Yes.
Right? Like, we value commitment. Okay, people can say that. Well, as we all know, what commitment means to me could be very different than what commitment means. I know it's not.
Well, no, in general, but across people, no, you and me, I agree.
Right. We're good.
We got some shared meaning.
But that's also because we've both invested time and energy to ensure that we've got shared meaning.
That's right.
Right? It means that we're okay talking about it. We're okay letting people ask questions, asking each other, wait, did you actually mean this or this?
Right.
And that's where I think it's really detrimental for a lot of organizations to have values, but not to actually do a good job communicating them or living them, because it's almost like false advertising.
Yeah.
Right? Because if somebody comes and they're very clear about their personal values and they're like, yeah, I want to work for a company that has a lot of integrity. They know in their head what integrity looks like. And that's what they are expecting from their organization.
Yes.
And the issue is, if they don't get it, then like you said, there's this disconnect. If they have a strong sense of their self-worth, they may do like you did and try to close the gap by saying, hey, wait a minute, you told me Y, but you're doing X. I'm confused. Can you help me figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
Or they may just have kind of this knee-jerk reaction we talked about before, which is, this feels really gross and I don't like it here, I'm leaving.
Right. That's something to watch out for in the culture of a company. There are companies, and I would say technology and startups, any startup, they have this concept of, we're not going to deal with anything until it's a fire. If it doesn't fit in our priorities of getting money, getting the product out, getting whatever, right? So those are some common traps that startups can fall into. And then they inadvertently walk this walk of, well, until somebody threatens to quit, I'm not even going to address this. And that is not a good culture, because now you have a whole bunch of 2-year-olds throwing tantrums all the time. That is all on us, the leader of the organization is. So once we have these values and we know what they are, not only are we communicating them, are we living them and having these conversations? Because it makes quitting the easy way out. If we don't have values and we're not strong in our values, that's where quitting becomes the easy way out. It's like, oh, there's nothing else for me to do. There's always something else to do, by the way. I listened to the rationale. We started on kids, so sorry about this. Carter is working on rationalizing why he does or doesn't do something in the grand scheme of how we live and what's important to us in our household. And it's really interesting to watch. It becomes very clear to me, oh, he's on the right track, or, oh, I'm really not living what I'm saying. What I'm doing is different than what I'm saying. And it's a great mirror. We could do the same thing with our employees if we were to be curious enough about it and interested enough about it. And that will actually solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it?
There's also a question of humility.
Okay.
That comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Because I do think that as the leader of the organization, a lot of times we feel, I don't want to say too good, but we're like, yeah. But it's just, they don't get the vision. That's why. Sometimes we can say that to ourselves, like, well, okay, but they just don't get it. And it's like, well, but if they don't get it and you want them to be part of the organization, you need to make sure they get it. And that's where I think a lot of times this, we've kind of said it a couple of different ways, but this notion of living and actually managing to the values is so important. And unfortunately, it's really hard to do. Mm-hmm. Right? Like even on a personal level, like you were saying, sometimes in our own personal lives, we're like very clear about what it is we expect. But in fact, your kids will come up and be like, well, so how come it's okay for you to do that, but not for me?
Right. And I'm not even there yet.
Just wait. Yeah. It's really humbling when your kids are like, really? So it's not okay to do that? Well, how come you just did it? Mm-hmm. Well, that was different. It's got to be this humility, but coming from a place of knowing that it doesn't make you false or fake or a liar. It's just, oh, okay, well, I didn't recognize that. You know, that situation, you've opened my eyes to it, and I will try to do better next time.
Yep.
But that requires a lot of sort of confidence, and it's not really confidence. It requires a lot of self-esteem and a lot of self-worth to be able to say that.
Yes.
To anyone.
Yes.
Much less to an employee.
Well, exactly. And being able to see they may not have, for whatever reason, could be culture, could be their personality, they may not be able to step up and speak for themselves. And it's not up to us as the leader to help them find their voice. It is up to us, to a leader, to recognize and see where things are going, because if they never find their voice, then there's a different kind of a problem that's going on. But making sure that the ways are open, making sure to introduce that the path is here, invite them to go down that path. Now we're talking about things, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the masculine and the feminine, and everything we're talking about seems very nurturing, which we forget that is necessary as a leader. It doesn't matter if we're a man or a woman. If it feels too feminine, men, leaders out there, be bold about it. And we're going to come back to that, because ambition is intertwined with our ability to understand and connect with others.
And again, it's easy because we are moms, because we talk a lot about nurturing, to think, oh, well, yeah, that's really cool for a small business, you know, whatever.
Right.
But the truth is, if you look at someone like Zappos, so I don't know Tony Hsieh personally. I can't vouch for his ability to nurture his employees personally, but one of the reasons that they are very successful with the way that they've chosen to structure their business and the way that they've chosen to manage is because they've recognized the needs of their employees as individuals. Nobody wants to be a cog in a machine. Right. Everybody wants a little bit of autonomy. Everybody wants the ability to make decisions. And by giving his employees the guiding principle, which is we want to make our customers happy. We are here to serve. He empowered tons of people to do stuff that he never could have mandated.
Right.
I mean, there's that story about the guy that wanted pizza, right? So they were on the phone with the Zappos people, and they're like, I know this has nothing to do with you, but I need pizza, right? And the guy from Zappos found them a pizza place. That person will never, ever forget Zappos.
Exactly.
Right? There's no question. Like the impression that they've made on that individual, and by extension, all the people who've heard that story, is invaluable.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Tony Hsieh never thought of that. You know, he wasn't like, okay, and so if they call you and they ask you a question about pizza, here's what you say.
Which is our downfall a lot as leaders. We think so much about process and we think about everything that we can possibly think of that we leave so much out. And then nothing happens, or we fall short when it's outside of everything that we've thought of, because we're people. We're never going to think of everything. Plus, we don't know how cool the strengths of the people that we have decided to bring into our organization are until we let them show up in a situation and see what they do. I have to tell you, that is the coolest, most amazing thing ever. Hey, I've got a problem. What solutions? Andrew Jenkins was sharing the story of his mentor of, I don't expect to be able to solve a problem. I'm going to intentionally set a meeting. I'm going to show up at a meeting with intention, knowing that we've got the right people that are coming to that room to find a solution. I don't have to have the solution. And I think that's another thing where when we think about ambition and drive versus being nurturing and developing an organization, they end up being separate when they're actually together. If we can use our ambition and recognize we don't always have the answers and we don't expect to, here comes back to our own self-expectations, we don't expect to, we can accomplish more, we can actually, thrive is not the right word, we can build the drive, the ambition of our employees too, and we're getting everybody roots. It's making it very clear that people are part of, understand, and have a shared meaning with the values that we bring.
You talk to people initially about the military, what most people think are like, they just follow orders, right? Like there's no creativity, there's no leeway, there's no innovation, anything going on. But the truth is the power of the military is that everybody understands the objective.
That's right. And their part in getting there.
There's just one.
There's one. And they understand their part in getting there.
Exactly.
And they don't have to know what I'm doing. I don't have to know what they're doing.
Exactly. They just have to do their job to the best of their ability.
That's right.
And if things go wrong, they still need to do their job. That's where they're empowered to do whatever it takes. If their job is communications, then they need to keep communications going, whatever it is. And that's where I think a lot of us have this model where, like you were saying, it's one or the other. Either you give orders and it's super structured and very rigid, or it's a free-for-all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, you just need to get people all moving in the right direction by giving them a very clear target.
Yes.
And making sure they're all committed to it. Because I think that's the other thing is that people, generally speaking, people who choose to be in the military want to achieve that objective. That's what they pick.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where values can be very useful, because I think in the employment world, all too often, we kind of just say, well, I need someone to put in this spot. We're kind of thinking of it as a tool, right? Like, okay, I need a crayon. I need a pencil, And we go out and we're like, well, it's yellow, it's green, it's number 2, it's number 5, it's mechanical, we don't really care. We're just like, I need a pencil. And the problem is really for our organization, what we needed was the yellow 2 Ticonderoga, because that's what's going to help us get to our mission. We needed that specific person to help us get to our mission. And we're not using our values to help us figure out that it's the number 2 Ticonderoga. Right? We just need a pencil. Any old pencil will do.
That's exactly right. So everything we've talked about with values and expectations and self-worth and this concept of what quitting means is all very real. And now we're going to wrap up by talking about why this is bold, why this is different, why this is more important than ever before. And it's going to be the companies and the leaders that are able to embrace this, that have sustainable companies that last as long as they want them to last, to get them to their end goal with the results that they want. Where would you start, Stephanie?
I think that being bold enough to quit is important, but I think the part of it that's being bold is not the fact that you walk in one day and say, take this job and shove it. Right? That's not the bold part. The bold part is actually knowing that it's the right thing for you to do. Quit. It's looking, like you were talking about, Jess, at, okay, here's my path. Here's where I'm really trying to go as a company. And here's where maybe this employee, it's not working out. Or here's where I'm trying to go as a company, and here's where this product or this customer is taking me a totally different direction, and I need to stop product development, or I need to change my target market, or I need to really clarify my values, maybe, because I've got a lot of employee turnover.
Yes.
But I need to make a change, and not doing it as a knee-jerk reaction, not doing it based just on a feeling of, ooh, this is weird. I don't like it. Let me stop doing it so I don't have to feel this anymore. But really taking the time to evaluate why it is that you want to quit. And then understanding that it's just a path to something different, right? Like, it's not the end of the world. We all know that. We've all left jobs. We've all been okay after. But knowing that it's actually going to help you move on to something bigger, better, more closely aligned with your values is where I think it's bold. Because I think, like I said, unfortunately, I think a lot of people just change for the sake of, well, this isn't working. I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to change.
And I think it's bold because we look at words like drive, like ambition, like our own self-worth differently. And so I'm internalizing it. It was great that you did an external version, and I'll do an inside version, in the sense of, I can be a bold leader when I recognize there is a compassionate part of drive. I can be a bold leader and get different results, better results, more results, when I recognize that there are other people with ambitions like mine, and when they align, when we have the same goal and understand the same objective, we're going to achieve more than any of us thought when we put it all together. And I think that's also where it's really bold. And so I love the concept of what you were talking about with quit. Yeah, we got to quit stuff. We got to quit after thoughtful evaluation, which, by the way, is either decision-making or problem-solving. Could come out of the processes of either one of those. But to really take the time and recognize we don't have to give up, and we are not giving up when we quit, when we're thinking about it in a way that would be useful. And actually, maybe that's the question, is the starting question of why this is bold. Is this useful? Is this useful? Any closing thoughts before we?
It's so funny. As we talk, I get all these different ideas, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. That's the other thing that I think could help a lot of people, is actually being open to talking to somebody else.
Yes.
You know what? Maybe that's what I say is, my closing thought is, one thing that I want you to quit doing. I want you to quit doing everything on your own. I want you to talk to more people and be open to more new ideas, because I do think that that's really, as Jess has said several times, where the value comes, and not just people that you think are kind of at your same level. Great ideas can come from everywhere, but you have to be open to them.
Thank you for listening. You will find program notes at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/P42. That's P for program 42. You can also search Don't Give Up, Just Quit. Make sure after you listen to this episode, review us and subscribe so that future Voice of Bold Business Radio programs can be delivered directly to the platform that you use to listen to radio and podcasts. Leaders, I am talking to you. I'm also talking to myself as a leader as well. It's our stories and it's our experiences that keep this conversation going, that keep developing what a leader in today's workforce, in today's economy looks like. We want to know what it means from your experiences and building out the story of what a leader is today. We want to know, when did you not give up and just quit?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.